Welcome to HK. Today we're going to recap romantic drama. You Knock on My Door, Episode 1. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Middle-class orphan Ida Hyhand Ursel had big dreams of becoming a landscape architect. But she can't afford to go abroad for her last year of school because her scholarship was cut off. She's so mad she throws rocks at the company owner Serkan Bolat, played by Kerem Bürsin, who cancelled the scholarship and makes no apologies about it either. Serkan is a successful architect who has made it big in life, and to run this enormous architectural design firm. One day we were introduced to Serkan's partner Engin, and Layla, his personal assistant. They had been having an ongoing discussion about whether or not they should tell Serkan something, but as he was about to leave for the day, it turned out that Selena, his ex-girlfriend, has just gotten engaged. Upon finding this out from Layla after work hours, as she handed him an invitation, he hurries home because there was no time for celebration before heading off to yet another meeting at the college upstate where someone else made sure they locked the door so they couldn't go inside while they talked with each other. Without consulting each other, they all headed over to Melek, Melo, Seren, and Fifi's old university. They were all curious about the chance to hear Serkan himself speak. But when Ida finally saw him, she could only think of what he had done to her scholarship without fail. No one else noticed as she made it up on stage with all eyes transfixed on the speaker, who was still oblivious to her presence in front of such a large audience. She slapped away the microphone before shouting everything that had been troubling her for years at him, claiming that his company still owed her some money for outstanding scholarships despite his vigorous protestations. Frustration clouded Serkan's face momentarily before she snatched back her microphone and left backstage again, this time angry-faced at how easy it was to push his buttons after months trying not to care about anything anymore. She discovered as she was parking her own SUV in the extravagant-looking lot that the flashy convertible belonged to Serkan. Enraged, Ida took out one of her keys and scratched it against his car, but that wasn't enough for him. She wrote "CNBIR" on one side of his car. Meanwhile, unaware of all this, Serkan was talking on the phone with his assistant about Ida's accusations of cancelled scholarship funds when he noticed a set-off lick spittle writing all over his precious sports car. A puzzled expression appeared on his face before he got out and looked at it, demanding explanations from Ida, who tried to escape but couldn't resist getting caught by him again. Reluctant yet compliant to answer questions after being coerced into doing so once more, she gave a vague response before walking away. Her eyes were closed shut while she contemplated how to escape from this man gripping onto her tightly. Forcing out a sob, he seemed satisfied and loosened his grip around her arm. Pushing away the wave of relief that washed over her, Serkan grabbed for the handcuffs lying just behind him on the passenger seat of the car, which were an awful thing to find so close when you need them most, and clumsily tried attaching one side of it to himself and then snatching up the other side quickly before locking herself in place by hooking it onto his free wrist. She was now locked at both wrists with Serkan, unable to go anywhere or do anything without being joined together as well. He is stunned by the turn of events and Ida says, "Okay, let's go to the police station. Let's see what happens if you show up." He retorts that she has gone mad, not for the last time this episode, but Layla phoned back saying all of their scholarships were cancelled a year ago by the company's CFO, who did it without telling anyone else. Ida was right after all. Serkan was furious, but managed to rein in his anger and asked her to accompany him back to the car so he could open his handcuffs. When he looked inside though, there was no key. They were stuck together indefinitely from then on out. With those words spoken, she balked at his request, but he reminded her that they were in this situation due entirely to her choices rather than his own, which made her feel worse about everything yet again. He is running late for an important meeting and she will have to go with him, figuring out that since he's handcuffed to her, she will drive his car. We are treated to a scene where Ice does what comes naturally, reaching over her shoulder with one arm, the one attached to Serkan, when she needs something from the back seat, pulling him closer by tugging at his handcuffs. They're nose to nose as they gaze deeply into each other's eyes while time freezes around them. Before long, however, they snap out of it and settle in, only for Serkan goes on about how he knows best when it comes to driving this particular make of vehicle. He doesn't even get through saying anything before Ice peels away from the curb in a smoky squeal of tires. Her friend on the phone didn't believe her when she said that she was going to see Serkan Bolat for an important meeting. She had always been vocal about how much she disliked him, so there was no way it could be true, right? But when Mello mentions that he might be with the Prince of England instead, it changes everything. As they went along in the taxi while still talking back and forth, they took note of a small dark spot on her skin at the base of her thumb where there was what looked like an old tattoo gone wrong. He noticed before too long that it looked like a constellation, something to do with stars, which then led them to talk about astronomy and astrophysics. Something quite interesting for someone who enjoyed reading about space all day long. After some time trying every key from their stash for hours until finally one worked, thanks Engin, they were free once again. All of Ida's friends were worried about her whereabouts, but thankfully one was adept at using a Find My Phone app. It led them to the hotel where Serkan had his meeting, and they found out he was handcuffed to Ida, who would not move because she had claustrophobia and refused to take the elevator. They climbed 16 flights of stairs until they reached their destination, which was also on the 16th floor, a fancy restaurant filled with people from all over Europe waiting for dinner. They managed to meet with the man whose land Serkan wanted to buy without revealing that they were handcuffed together, by stating they are dating, and that is why they were cuddling so close. The man seemed enamored with Ida, and there was a fleeting glimpse of jealousy across Serkan's face when he saw how flirtatious the man was being. Eventually, the deal was sealed, partially due to Ida, and she dragged Serkan all the way downstairs after he complained about feeling hot. When he asked for her help, there was an charged moment between them where she loosened his tie and unbuttoned his top button before reverting back to playful banter again. When Serkan finally has his opportunity to escape, he takes full advantage of it. His friend Engin had enlisted a team consisting of his lawyer, security personnel and others to get him out of handcuffs. After briefly waiting for the right moment, they managed to do so when one of the men pulled open Serkan's cuff while Ida picked at the lock until she was successful and Serkan ran away. He insisted that Layla take responsibility because if anything bad had happened then she would have been responsible. Although he cared deeply about her, he knew that she was always getting herself into trouble like this, so decided that hiring someone else would be best, especially since Layla seemed relieved that he had fired her and even thanked him for giving her an excuse not to continue working for him anymore. Serkan wonders why he didn't check for her identity when he found her purse, but soon remembered that she insisted on anonymity. It was then that it hit him she wanted to remain anonymous because of the things she did after work hours. She swore not to be reckless anymore, and they both headed over to his office. When Serkan questioned one of his other workers about why the scholarship was cancelled without warning, all they said was they knew how much Serkan cared about spending money on such things, and figured it would be easy enough just to cut some of those expenses, so they had done it without informing him first. And yet there seemed like there should have been a discussion about this before making these changes. Who else is aware of what goes on outside of work? With patience running thin, Ida finally enters Serkan's office on the 3rd floor and demands to collect her belongings. Upon finding Layla there, who has just been terminated, Ida takes advantage of an opportunity to get revenge against Serkan by picking her mind for information, despite her reluctance at first. After some persuading from Ida, she reveals that one of his biggest pet peeves is making mistakes because it makes him look bad in front of his superiors. As Ida enters Serkan's office, the sexy music playing sets the tone. With an obvious interest in her smile and eye contact, he replies that she can keep her bag while taking back her lipstick. She asks if he was wondering what was written on the car symbol O, which translates to you or AO. A teasing smirk emerges onto his face before he quickly looks away because now it is too late for him to figure out who she would call this person. He doesn't think of himself as someone with such power, alluding to how there were times when someone else would cancel scholarships without him knowing. She argues that there is nothing anyone could do other than punish themselves since everyone thinks they're not at fault for anything. In turn, he concedes and offers something valuable enough for Ida to stay happy, reinstating her scholarship without cost or strings attached. She rejects his suggestion, abruptly turning away from the CEO. Ida heads back to work where she is confronted by a group of people wanting to know what just happened in the conference room. Embarrassed and defiant, she says nothing, refusing the CEO's request for pity. Her colleague who was there responds instead, gladly taking credit for coming up with an outrageous solution before assuring them that it won't happen again. A few days later, when asked to comment on her idea once again, Ida retorts that no one understands her principles better than she does herself, stopping just shy of stepping out of line with more inquiries because she respects herself too much as well as those around here. Layla, who witnessed all this transpire, could not be prouder, labeling Ida her new hero. Ida threw herself on the couch in frustration, trying to keep herself composed so that her aunt wouldn't notice how upset she was. The stars outside seemed daunting to look at right now, just gazing down like indifferent children with no answers for adults' life-altering questions. She knew what she wanted, what her purpose here on Earth might be, but had absolutely no clue how to get there. As if reading her mind, a reassuring voice comes through the phone's speaker. It was Cenk. It had been a whole year since they last spoke, and after an initial awkward small talk exchange, he tells Ida that he'll take care of anything for her, in Italy. Ida hangs up excitedly after accepting his offer, brushing over every detail of his words until everything felt perfect once again, as if nothing bad could touch them ever again. Mello had pleaded to Ida to take over an early morning flight attendant job which she didn't have time to do before meeting up with Cenk. Now, Ida agreed, only realizing when boarding the plane that her solitary passenger was none other than Serkan himself. Midway through the flight, as she's delivering breakfast, she found out from Serkan himself that he wanted food, a fact which came as quite a surprise. Nonetheless, they both laughed while sitting down together during their meal service, and shared stories about themselves in order to get caught up on what went on while they were apart. When landing back home, however, after such a long absence away from each other due to Mello needing help taking care of the kids, Arda said goodbye again to both of them before speeding off down the highway, crying all the way back home because it felt like it would never work out no matter how hard they tried or how much they loved each other. As soon as Selin walks through the door, she knew something was wrong. She sees Ferret sitting there with this huge grin on his face, which obviously means he is up to something. Plus, this con guy seems strangely interested in her husband, and insists that she try one of these exotic drinks. One glance at Serkan tells her it's just alcohol, but when he starts drinking, she could not say no if she wanted to. This way things can only get worse, but right now all Selin feels like doing is breaking out into hysterics, laughing at all those pathetic faces around her. As soon as they see each other in the distance, both of them instinctively know that this meeting will not end well, but every step brings them closer to each other. It doesn't take long before all hell breaks loose and Selin storms over to them with a look of rage on her face. When she reaches them, she pulls the man off his feet by his collar and punches him hard across the jaw. She then pushes the woman away from him before asking, "What do you think you're doing here?" Serkan politely told Ida to agree with everything he said and greeted Selin and Ferret as they walked onto the set. He introduced them both to Ida but could not provide her name because he still did not know it. "I call her my strawberry," Serkan added when they exited stage, left as quickly as possible, leaving behind Selin, who looked really disappointed by this turn of events. Wasn't she eager for Serkan to try and win her back? She never wanted to marry moronic Ferret anyway. Ida refused to get in the car with him and ended up back on the coast, where she cursed his name before telling him that there was no way he would ever make her do anything like what he had suggested. To be fair, he is indirectly responsible for wrecking her life, but this time around, he was willing to invest in it once more so long as there were conditions attached. Posing as his fiancée for 2 months until Selin got married. As they arrive at the airfield in Istanbul, they are ambushed by the paparazzi because someone at the engagement party put the news of their engagement on social media. Serkan tells her on the drive to her place that there will be a press conference in the morning to announce the new project, and at that time he will let reporters know that they are not engaged. He will say that she is his assistant. She agrees, and he tells her she needs to stand near him during this event. On Saturday morning, Ida and her friends make the trip to the conference hotel on the coastal cliffs near their homes. Ida had invited them all along, telling them she would be going alone this time, but they couldn't resist wanting to know what was said at yesterday's meeting. When they meet up with Cenk before leaving for home, he reveals that he has just broken up with her by calling off all contact between them permanently, because he is moving back home to Italy and she can't leave Dubai for various reasons. It turns out it was always about my new life without me. Who does such a thing? Alluding to this bombshell only minutes from now would have been merciful enough. Ida is bewildered and catches herself asking him what he meant by those words. In response, he denies any accusation. It was impossible because the whole world knew she was betrothed to Serkan, right? But Ida can't contain her anger at hearing this, even though she had anticipated such an insult from Shefik. No one is better suited for such betrayal than him. He moves back trying to justify himself, but Ida refuses to listen, instead marching out of the room in fury and going outside where the press conference has already commenced. With everyone gathered there, including journalists from all over Turkey, surprised at their appearance, Serkan starts explaining how there had been a misunderstanding when before stepping down off the podium. Ida interrupts him for only a moment before grabbing his face tightly in both hands and kissing him soundly on the lips, while onlookers stare agape at them, dumbfounded. The end. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. And hit the like button to help us out. Until next time, take care.